Hello, welcome to Chapter 6, Public Policy and Family Professional Partnerships, and in this segment we'll be talking about IDEA, the law that ensures that every child receives free and appropriate public education. There are two major parts to IDEA. I want to discuss those specifically. So Part C deals with children age 0 to 3. And Part B will take children from 3 to 21. These are children with disabilities. In Part C, we want to account for the significant need for brain development, the idea that children need experiences in order to develop appropriately. Even children with developmental, cognitive, and physical disabilities still need stimulation, activities, in order for the brain to continue to develop and grow. And if we do this correctly, we can maximize the children's potential to live independently. And this begins, of course, very early on. The eligibility, the significant physical or mental disability or diagnosed condition. Now, the book does not go into how children are diagnosed, but we should know that it takes at least 2 psychometric examinations or tests. However, if you would like to know more information, I have posted additional resources in the website. For Part B, as I mentioned, we go through elementary through secondary ed. The child can qualify in one of 12 disability categories, including emotional disturbance, ADHD, and other categories. The parent must agree that there is a cognitive delay and that the child needs services. So again, going back to the accountability video, there are a lot of parent rights that are involved in IDEA, and those are reiterated since IDEA was before NCLB. However, with the Elementary Secondary Education Act, they're about the same time, but NCLB reinforces the IDEA Part B need for parental consent for services and what those services may be. Again, mentioning that IDEA ensures free and appropriate public education for all children. We understand that this means there are 4 tenets to this: the equal opportunity for all children, the full participation for children with disabilities in the educational setting, and the goal of having children with disabilities grow up to be independent and self-sufficient. That they can also develop this idea of self-determination and figure out where they want to go with their life, and then to complete that goal economically, physically, so on and so forth. Like NCLB, there are 6 principles of IDEA specifically pertaining to Part B. The first is 0 reject. So part of free, appropriate public education is the idea that we cannot exclude any individual from public education scene. This is known as 0 reject. And just remember that children were excluded from public education schools. Again, think separate and equal in this term, and this happened all the way up until 1975. If you look at European schools, for example, many children with disabilities are excluded to this very day. In fact, in Luxembourg, children tend to drop out of the system in that small country of Luxembourg because of the rigor of the public education system. They typically will move to Germany or France or other countries like that, even Belgium, that will provide education for children with disabilities and help include them in the setting. Very few children make it past middle school or high school very few children who have significant cognitive or physical disabilities. So in America, it's a very different idea. So principle number 2 is after zero reject is non-discriminatory evaluation. Again, talking about the multiple tests that need to be done in order to evaluate the child for diagnosis or cognitive delays. The procedures, valid and reliable procedures. The timing, we'd like to have frequent evaluations. We know this through the RTI process, as we typically would have weekly progress monitoring that goes on. The interpretation of the evaluation data must be done by the professionals that the test talks about, and this, of course, ensures the validity and the reliability of the test. Number 3, appropriate education. So what the law discusses is this idea that teachers must differentiate for the child with special needs. The teacher, the child, the parent, these are all members of the IFSP or the IEP team. Typically the child, depending upon their age, will become a member of the IEP process. The school will comply with these requirements, and of course, the parents should read and become involved in developing the individual family service plan, or the IEP. This becomes really, really important. So make sure that we are involving the parent as much as possible in the school process with the IEP, and also with the learning that goes on in the classroom. How is the child getting differentiated instruction to meet the goals of their IEP or IFSP? Number 4, LRE, the least restrictive environment, the opportunity to work with families to plan the placement. So what this does is exactly that, is it allows you as the educator to bridge the gap and help provide the opportunities for the families to help plan what would be the least restrictive environment, the most inclusive environment for the child with disabilities. What is it that they can handle and do? Where can they be challenged, but not so much that they become overly frustrated? Number 5, the due process. Just a couple notes on this, because I think you understand this a little bit. This provides accountability for FAPE in the least restrictive environment. So the parents can go to due process, which is litigation type of hearing. Hopefully it's a positive litigation hearing where the outcome can be a more inclusive environment for the child. Hopefully due process is not enacted. This is, of course, I think, a last resort. I think that there are other avenues, and Turnbull talks about this very well, the mediation that can occur between the local education environment, so the local school board, for example, and the teachers and the parents. And so a resolution session can occur well before, and should occur well before, due process. Please make sure that the parents understand that due process is their right, and you as educators would have legal representation provided to you through the local education agency. However, let's make it very, very clear that there should be third-person mediation or some other resolution discussion well before any due process hearing is enacted. Last but not least, parent participation. This is, of course, one of the foci of this course. So parents had previously been excluded from this process of making decisions. So as IDEA has been enacted and revised over the years, you see that the parents have been allowed larger amounts of participation within disciplinary hearings, the evaluation and programming of the child, the understanding the rights of the child and understanding the rights afforded to them through IDEA, and they should be informed of these rights. They should have access to school records and control and access to them. This, I think, is very important as children become migratory in a way, as they move from school to school, and even as children progress from elementary to middle to high school to transitional services. This, I think, is really, really important, that parents understand that they have a right to access the school records and that they actually do control these records for the child with disabilities, that they can take these with them. This would not only be beneficial for the parent, but extremely beneficial for the next school to find out what the previous school had done for the child. And of course, last but not least, to participate in special state and local special education advisory committees. So we'd really like to see more parental involvement in those areas as well, to become advocates, really, for students with special needs. Not just their own children, but children like their children.